In this film today, we're going to be looking at specification and why it matters and why it has such an important and large influence over the value of a gun at auction. So we'll start off by looking at a Purdey that we have here. It's a gun built in the 1980s. We'll be looking at various things on it. We can see from the condition, and I've covered condition in another film, that this is an extremely fine and little used example. But the very first thing that I will do after I've had a brief examination of the gun will be to measure the barrel length, because barrel lengths are very fashionable. Today long barrels are very much in fashion. 40 years ago short barrels were very much in vogue. This gun was built in the 80s. It could be here on the cusp of the trends. It could have either a good or a bad length. 30 inches, so that's a very favourable length. A lot of people like to shoot with a gun with 30-inch barrels today, and that is a great assistance. We pop the gun on the scales to see how much it weighs. 6 pounds 13 ounces. That's a good solid weight, not too heavy, but certainly not too light. In today's market, a lot of people are looking for a side-by-side to be between 6.5, 6.75 pounds, going up to about 7.25 pounds. Heavier guns are rather more fashionable today. Likewise, the third very important feature is the stock. Obviously it needs to be a nicely figured piece of timber, but we're looking at the length. We can see there are no extensions or additions on this one. It measures 15.25 inches, which is a good long length. That will suit a lot of people, and likewise it can easily be shortened a little bit should a shot of smaller dimensions be looking at it. Extensions of stock lengths are very important. You don't want extensions ideally, and a lot of people looking at this gun today will be looking at that, and that's very good news. No pads, no extensions. Good overall favourable specification. Moderate degree of cast for the right shoulder. Good normal specifications. It's a gun that would suit a lot of right-handed shots. A lot of people of normal build, from the sort of 5'11" to sort of 6'3" sort of size, would be able to shoot with that gun very favourably. If we look at the gun we've got next to it, this is a rather wonderful Charles Lancaster that was built in the 1930s. That was a time when lightweight guns with short barrels were very fashionable. We look at this gun here and we measure the barrels. We can see it has 25-inch barrels. The idea at the time was to have a very quick, fast-moving gun. You got onto the birds quickly. It was very fashionable to shoot with a very quick handling gun, which this indeed is. It barely weighs feels like a feather, feels like a wand, and it weighs 5 pounds 13 ounces, which is very lightweight for a 12 bore. It was a feature. The 1220 was a model that Lancaster did with weight reduction especially in mind. It was advertised as being a 12 bore with the weight and handling of a 20 bore. But of course, in today's market, people don't like lightweight guns anything like as much. Recoil is always a factor. With a very light gun such as this with standard cartridges, that will recoil quite a lot. That will probably hurt. That's probably the reason why it originally was built with a recoil pad. And again, if we look at the stock, we're going to look at the length, but we can already see the stock it's been extended. We've got about half an inch wooden extension on there, together with the pad. The pad is hard and perished, so the pad will need replacing. And it measures 15 inches with all of that. But if we take all of that off and measure it to the beginning of the extension, it's only 13.75 inches. If you decided that you wanted that stock without any additions, to finish that, you're probably going to end up with a stock, by the time you've shaped it and checkered it, it's probably going to be 13.5 inches, which is far too short for the majority of people. The majority of people who are going to be looking to buy this gun will probably be considering restocking it, and that has a big influence on the value of the gun, because the cost of restocking today is quite considerable, and you're probably going to be losing 50% of the value of the gun because of the unfashionable short barrels and the relatively short stock, which a lot of people will consider would need replacing. Now we'll look at one final gun here, but you may well notice the rather unusual stock dimensions. This is what is known as a crossover stock. This gun has been built for a right-handed shot who has maybe blind in his right eye, or suffers from impaired vision, or just has a left master eye. So the gun is built in this way so that when he mounts the gun, the stock shape places the barrels and the rib in front of his left eye rather than his right eye. So you mount the gun like so, and you're looking down the left rib. But of course, very few shots are going to be looking for a stock of this specification. Again, although it's an interesting collector's piece because of that, there's probably no one who's going to be looking at this gun to shoot. And because of that, again, the value is greatly diminished. Also, if we look at the length, we can see it appears quite short, 13 inches. So it's obviously built for a very small person. So we're looking for a very small shot who shoots from the right shoulder, but with the left master eye. Very few people, so it's a very limited market for that gun. Barrel length 30 inches, that is favourable for it. But because of the dimensions of the stock and the cost of replacing that, again, that gun is worth, again, about half what it would have been worth if it had more conventional or more favourable measurements. All of these factors, you know, have quite an effect on the value of a gun, and you can have two absolutely identical guns apart from their barrel length and stock length, and you can have an enormous difference, a 40 or 50% difference in the value of the gun. I hope you found that interesting. That's just you know, some of the facts that we look at, some of the things that we're always looking at whenever we're presented with guns for valuation and potential inclusion in a sale.